Hi, boys and girls. This is Mrs. McQuistion, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about genre today. So, when we hear the word genre, I want you guys to think of two umbrellas. So, genre is when you are reading a book, it has to have a category. So, one of the first umbrellas I want you to think about is fiction. So, if you look over here at the orange umbrella, we can see all these different types of fiction. Fairy tale, legend, folk tale, mystery, fantasy, and realistic fiction are some examples. And in fiction, we know that if it's a fiction story, that means it is not real. So the author created their story, and it's not something that has happened in real life. And then over here, we have another umbrella. This umbrella is purple, and it says nonfiction. And when we hear the word nonfiction, I want you to think of something that happened in real life. So, the author of these types of books, which could be history books, science books, newspapers, magazines, and biographies, those types of books are real. And those things happen to real people, real animals, real events. Those are things that have actually happened. And so, that's what we're going to talk about quickly. I just want you to know that there's fiction and nonfiction. And today we're going to look specifically at fantasy right here. And I'm going to change my slide. So, fantasy, I'm sure you've all heard some really great fantasy stories, but maybe you didn't know they were called fantasy. When we have a fantasy story, that means it was made up. Just like all other fiction stories, it is pretend. But there's some special things about fantasy that we can learn. So if you see right here, it says characters that could not be real. In a fantasy story, the author makes up the character, and oftentimes it's an animal or somebody that has magic, an animal who's talking. So right here, an animal who talks like our little mouse, if you give a mouse a cookie. Do animals normally wear clothes? Not really. And so that's one way we can tell this book is fantasy. And oftentimes, if an animal is acting like a human, that will tell you it's a fantasy story. So, right here, when they're acting like humans. And if people have magic, if there's types of wizards or other magical creatures, that will also be fantasy. And then one other part of fantasy that we can know is that they are events that could not be real or happen in real life. And one example that I really like is from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And in that book, it's raining food. The whole book is about it's raining food, or there's a hurricane of tacos or something like that. So, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, I don't know if food actually rains from the sky. So, we can know that this story is fantasy because there are events that couldn't be real. So thank you for listening, and you'll be able to tell your teacher a little bit about fantasy in your Flipgrid video today. Bye!